In 1982, the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms received royal assent and entered into law, ushering in a new era of human rights in Canada. Charter rights is where the vast majority of our human rights come from. When an individual is under arrest, for example, and says, "I want to speak to my lawyer," this is a perfect example of charter rights. But what if I would tell you that you as an individual do not actually have rights? Section 32, paragraph 1 of the Charter concludes with, "The rights and freedoms contained therein only apply to the Government of Canada's actions." And so the rights and freedoms that we claim to have, we don't actually have entirely. We only have when they're being violated by the government. But what constitutes government? This is a very important question. It is also a massive question. My research seeks to answer the question so far as it relates to post-secondary educational institutions, such as universities or colleges. So the question I seek to answer specifically becomes, when is the action of a post-secondary educational institution to be considered a government action? Now, court decisions on this matter are rather limited, and so we don't have a crystal clear answer. The leading cases on this matter come from the Supreme Court of Canada's 1990 decision, McKinley versus the University of Guelph, as well as a series of decisions in Saskatchewan and Alberta known as the Whatcott decisions. Once we analyze all these things, it seems that the Charter only applies to institutions if the institution is acting on direct statutory authority, if the institution is under heavy and sufficient control of government, or if it is performing a government function by the jurisdiction set out in the Constitution. So let us analyze what our rights actually look like on campuses in Canada. The freedom of expression, religion, belief, opinion, none of these things actually exist on campus. They might only be said to be upheld because the university decides to. It would be unpopular otherwise, of course. Now, provincial human rights legislation is in force at all times, and so it may bridge the gap where the Charter does not actually apply. However, its scope may be deemed very insufficient. In Newfoundland, for example, a university or a college may actually discriminate against an individual because of their place of origin. In Quebec, because of their marital status. In Alberta, because of their political opinions and beliefs. And in Ontario, because of their nationality. It seems that the only time in which the Charter universally applies to university campuses is when they hand out traffic tickets, which for some happens far too often, parking specifically. So the question I seek to answer is an important one, is also a very complex and confusing one. Answering the question would tell us much more about how our rights actually exist, when we have rights, who can violate our rights, and how this all matters in the end. So when it comes to your rights on university campuses, I'm sorry to say, but they mostly do not exist. Thank you.